Hi, hello. Good afternoon.
Hello, Benjel.
Hi, how are you?
Fine.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
So let's begin. Let's just start with this. Do you have any question so far?
No, everything is okay for me.
Okay. Okay. So let's begin. Okay, great. Okay. The last time we were checking about the first part, the first integrated question. Now this is question number two. Okay. Remember, you have 4 questions. I mean, in the speaking section. The first one is independent. The second is that you already saw about announcements. You have to read and listen. And today we're going to focus on the question number 3. Okay. The question number 3 is about to read an article. You read this, similar to announcement, and then you will listen to a lecture about the same topic. In this case, is kind of a professor having a class about the same topic, discussing the same topic. It's not exactly a conversation, okay? So in this case, you have to take notes. It's a little longer. Actually, the question number 2, it's the easiest, I could say. So here, you need to read the article again. You only have time. You have, at the time that you are reading, you have to be taking notes. And then when you listen to a lecture, you have to take notes about examples they give. Okay, because and in the prompt they will ask you, support this idea, giving examples and reasons of that. So you have to take notes about examples. Okay. Also, you'll have 30 seconds to prepare when you finish reading and listening, and then you have to speak 60 seconds. This is the same for the 3 of them. So you have 30 seconds to prepare and 60 to speak. Okay, so today we want to focus on question number 3. Okay, so in this part, the reading will take about 45, 60 seconds to read completely. You have the article or passage on an academic topic. The author will introduce the topic, define it, and maybe give some additional details. Here, where you will listen, or in this case, where you will be reading, it's about how to introduce the general topic, is to introduce in the general context, giving ideas, giving some examples, but very overseas, not exactly very depth. Then in the listening will be a lecture. So the professor will give a further explanation on the same topic. He will present 1 or 2 examples, facts, evidence, etc. So the real world application of the context. For example, in the reading or in the passage, could be, I don't know, about the 3 laws of Newton, things like that. And they focus on one law, cause and effect. Then in the listening, the professor will explain more deep what is the 3rd law of Newton, something like that is given in a class about that topic. In this case, you need to pay attention about what are the examples the professor is giving to explain and make the other understand the topic that they are explaining. Okay. Normally, in the question, they will say this: using the examples that the professor gave, explain the concept. Now, in the prompt, you will see something similar to this. Now, using the examples that the professor gave, explain the concepts using using examples and reasons, things like that. Okay, but at the end is the same. Trying to say you need to explain things based on what the professor said. Okay. Now, as the last time I told you, the topics that I use are normally academically, so from school, normally from college. Okay, so could be about psychology, biology, business. More common are like these ones, and the others that maybe if you're lucky, you could have something about art, history, literature, sociology, geology, etc. So the common ones are from psychology and biology, we could say. No, and the psychology part is the we could say that is the easiest because you have interaction, memory, experiences, how we process and respond to them, learning, and things like that are common from psychology. So it's like theory. Then from biology, they will talk about living organisms, like how they work, their organization, life process, relationship, adaptations, evolution, things like that are related to biology. In that case, if you have the knowledge about the topic that you're talking, could help you um, when you are preparing your speaking. Could help you because it's better when you have it. You have the knowledge, so it's easier for you to explain what you're listening. Okay, but remember that they don't care about your personal opinion. Sounds rude, but it's like they don't care about your personal opinion. They actually care about what you understood from the reading and the listening only. So you have to sum up just that part, just the ones from what you read. Okay. Now about business, maybe sometimes I identify ones that says history of business, actually, how they process about business in the history, about marketing stuff. So these are the common ones. Okay, so the topics that are related, you could see is about this. I'm not saying that is exactly what you are going to see in the day of the TOEFL. Is like at the day of the TOEFL, maybe you'll have some a topic related to, I don't know, to art. Now it's like the teacher said it's more common to see in psychology. Well, in that case, you had something about art, but again, the common ones are these three for the topics. Like in the previous question, like in the question 2, you had to prepare for two notes. I mean, you had to take notes for two sides, from the reading and from the lecture. Okay, so from the reading, you need to identify the topic or key theme term and the definition. Okay, some details. The details are optional because in the reading is more the general context about everything than very specific thing. You need to only identify what are the main topic from that is generally on the title. Normally it's in the title, so you can understand what they say about. And in the lecture, you need to identify some examples and details about the ones that are related to the reading that they explain. Okay. So here, you need to, Well, the thing is that you when you identify what is the topic about in the lecture, you will listen the same topic but explaining further, no, explaining with more details. So in that case, you need to take notes about examples that they mention. Okay. For example, this is an example of an article. Okay. So please, Andrea Celada, can you read it?
Yes. Behavior modification. Individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequence of their actions. When an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in a pleasant consequence, then behavior is likely to be repeated. An unpleasant consequence, on the other hand, discourage further repetition of the behavior, while behavior modification can be observed in experiments. It also occurs frequently in everyday thinking, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about their consequence of that behavior.
Correct. Thank you. Now, if you see the general topic or everything is related to the behavior modification. It's in the title, okay? So all the thing that you want to listen and read is about the behavior modification. So that's what you need to pay attention. Sorry. So here, when you see the first time, when you say behavior modification, so the rest of this, you need to identify what is related to that topic. Now, here, if you can see at the end, it says, when individuals change their behavior based on what they have learned about the consequences of that behavior. So here is like a conclusion of everything. So normally, when you read all and when you're looking for examples of that, sometimes you will listen in the first 3 lines or at the last 3 lines, because it's the introduction of the topic. They explain in a wide way in the introduction and in the conclusion that they explain at the last part with very not exactly clear, but they explain a little bit about what they said of the topic. So you can find if the idea, the main idea, in the first 3 lines and in the last 3 lines, because okay, and in the middle you will see some examples more related to the examples or some explanation of that. So here it says, individuals often modify their behavior based on what they have learned about the possible consequence on their actions. If you see, this part is very similar to the last part, okay? Because on one thing that is predictable from TOEFL is that the structure they have is the same in everything. So you can identify things. For example, that the conclusion will be always similar to the introduction, not with the same words, but yeah, with the same idea. In this case, it's very, very similar, right? So when an individual learns through experience that a certain behavior results in pleasant consequences, that behavior is likely to be repeated. Okay? Here is an example. No? You do something, cause and consequence. What happened? Feels that is good. Consequence, repeat the behavior. So here is the example in the consequence example. An unpleasant consequence, on the other hand, discourage for the repetition of the behavior. Second example, again, cause and consequence. The cause is a bad situation, makes that you don't repeat that action. Okay, so here, in here, you can see what is the explanation, little explanation of that. And it says, while behavior modification can be observed in experiments, it also occurs frequently in everyday setting. Here, it says when or where it's happening. So when you're taking notes, what you need is to identify the topic, the main topic, and a little explanation of that, and some little examples. Again, you won't have time to copy all the text. So you need to only take notes for little parts that they say, then explain that. Okay, so don't spend too much time trying to copy all complete sentences like that. Only copy a few words that are that could help you to understand and to repeat a sentence. Then, when you have this, when you have the structure of the lecture, you will say it here, the brief, a possible brief introduction, and you can listen. And then you will listen to the examples, okay? You will listen to examples, okay? Normally, not all of them, but yeah, most of them have 2 examples or even 3 examples when they explain. So you have to be ready for 3 examples at least for 3 examples. You have the space on your piece of paper. You have three spaces for examples. If you don't use them, the 3 of them, well, you have enough time, enough space for that. Okay. Normally for biology and business, they mention only 2 examples because sometimes they compare one from another, and they use the contrast ideas. Okay, and from psychology lectures and readings, you will have only just 1 example. Okay, so here in the first example, it says from biology and business, they explain how apply the concept and give details from the first thing. And the second, apply a different concept, well, the same topic, but a different concept explaining that thing. So they give 1, 2, or even 3 examples of that. And the first one from psychology, you say a story from a professor's own life. So maybe you can hear about the life of the professor, like trying to explain. Remember that psychology is very open to explain one by one and saying words, not exactly from science. And then they explain using general examples in general. Normally, as the psychologists said, they use some experiments that they have, like, I don't know, trying to explain Oedipus method or what, I don't remember that. Okay, and then you have to look for 2 parts: the cause and effect, and the before and after are the same. Remember that cause and effect is you do something, something happened. Okay, and in this case, you had to pay attention of what are the contrast ideas, the sequence, signal words, all those words that introduce different ideas from comparing from the before and after, cause and effect, sequence or of events and things like that. Okay, so here you need to identify signal words that help you to understand where are they contrasting ideas? Where are they given examples of that, etc. Okay. Here. Now, here we have an example of a lecture. Okay, let's check it out. Please, Guillermo, can you start reading the first paragraph?
Okay. One adaptation is their ability to release chemical that can prevent damage for insects. Now we all know that insects need to eat the trees, leaves, and branches to survive, causing damage. Trees can limit this damage by releasing a chemical substance that insects can live with. This makes the trees less vulnerable to these attacks. For example, redwood trees release, gallutonic acid from their leaves and branches to scare off hungry insects.
Thank you. Pablo, can you continue, please?
Okay, another adaptation is their complex root system that helps them to survive during a storm. You see, trees have many roots and the roots can grow in all directions, even tangling with other trees' roots. So during a big storm, trees can survive by holding others up. Take redwood trees as an example. They have the strongest root system found in trees. The root system often extends as much as 100 feet around the tree. This is a very long distance compared to other trees' root system. In addition to that, this underground roots network often end up growing in circular clusters. These circular clusters give them tremendous strength against the forces of nature. This way, they can withstand high winds and even floods.
Thank you. So here, what is the main topic of this reading? What do you think is the main topic?
Adaptation.
Adaptation, correct? So here, what you need to do is to find some examples, very general examples, for the general topic, okay? And then you will hear to the professor explain a little more about this, okay? For example, here, Valeria Terrazas, can you read it?
This happens all the time with kids. In schools, say there's a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they're not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning, they might, I don't know, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they are supposed to be sitting down. You know, just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon they learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they are rewarded. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reaction from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to.
Okay, so is this related to the previous one? Are they both related? This is the lecture. No, this is part of the lecture from the male professor. And this is the article. And you can say, is this related to this? What kind of lecture do you think is this? Biology, psychology, history?
It's
Isn't
psychology.
it psychology?
Psychology.
Correct. So in the first one, you see in a very fancy way that they explain how they adaptate for things, and they took this example or this article to explain how they adapt, how kids adapt from school. Okay, so here what you need to do is to listen or to sum up the general idea from here from the article, and then check the examples they mention here, how to use to complete your speech. Okay, so as you can see, they don't repeat exactly from the first because that's the article here. Sometimes are, like in this case, is part of the psychology class. They can use real examples, like for here from kids and the teacher in some situations, and because it's related to a lecture, it's a class. Okay. Now, okay. Now, when you have already your notes from both, you have to be ready, or you have to take in mind that you need to use a lot of signal words, some linking words, okay, connectors, when you are giving your speech, right? So when you start speaking, remember you only have 30 seconds to prepare all, and you have to speak 60 seconds. So here it says, according to the reading passage, and you start explaining the general idea, is described as, and the definition. Like for example, in the first part, here goes the topic, the behavior modification, this and that, and then they explain what is behavior, and this is on the reading, right? So it's described as this and that and that. You explain that very briefly, what is the topic. Then in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing the example of the kid on the school and this and that, and start giving examples. Okay. Now let's see another one. These are some templates that you can follow, that you can use. Okay, very similar. Because you see, in the first part, I mean, introducing the general idea, it shouldn't take more than 10 to 15 seconds explaining that. Okay, just the general idea is going to be explained in 10 seconds or 15 as much. And maybe you can get explaining the topic, and you can take like 20 seconds explaining it, but at 20 is like too much sometimes. Because the last part, what they always require is you explaining the examples, the illustrations. So you need to take 45 seconds, 40 seconds, giving all the examples, trying to explain the topic, but given examples. Here, it's using in a subjectively way, using the professor as the main subject. The professor explains this and that, and the example says this and that, trying to explain it. So it takes the 60 seconds explaining it. Okay. Now here we have. Now this is a little longer. So it's the same as 60 seconds, but in the first 10 seconds, you will introduce the general idea, like according to the reading passage, introduce the topic, is described as, Again, you explain a little bit about the definition of the topic. And then you compare from the lecture. It says, in the lecture, the professor further illustrates this concept by providing 2 examples. When you notice and when you have already in your notes that you have 2 examples, you can use this because you can explain it. And you can introduce in the idea of having 2 examples. Then you need to use sequence signal words like first, secondly, furthermore, etc. So first, he or she explains that and give it a first example, introducing the first example. For instance, explain a little more that example, okay? And then it says, furthermore, he or she also mentions that you introduce the second example and then explain the second example to illustrate this and that. Okay? So it can take the 60 seconds. Now in the option of choice you have, as the passage mentions, this and that. Just like it happened to, so that's how by using the examples the professor demonstrates this. Okay. Also, depending on you, how good you are at this vocabulary, with this vocabulary, using this vocabulary, you know, because it is difficult for you to memorize. You shouldn't memorize. Is remember this part of your natural speaking. If you memorize it like that, in some point you will get stuck, you know, because it was like you could get nervous and then you forget what is the word in this. So the best thing you can do is to practice a lot daily till you get used to do these words. So in that case, you won't forget those words and you can explain very good. Okay. Now, depending on the prompt, they ask 2 things, or dependent, they could ask 2 things. One is to summarize the examples, or to summarize the first reading, to explain what happened with the first reading, and then give examples from the lecture. But they are focused on what are you trying to say on the reading. Or in the other hand, they ask just to mention the general idea from the reading, and then to focus on explaining the examples in the lecture. So you should be prepared for both, and you need to have the general idea and the examples from the lecture. Okay, so normally they ask more about the lecture, so you need to talk more. That's why they say you need to only speak from 10 to 15 seconds only in the reading. Okay, it takes like 15. It's not so much explaining what is the reading about, and then the rest should be about the lecture with explaining some things. Okay, again, take notes from both. Okay, because in this kind of questions, they ask you about both to sum up the reading and explain things from the lecture. So you need to you need to have information from both. One from giving the general context and the other for giving the examples. Transitional words, that is important when you give it some transitional, like those, when you say in the lecture, the professor for illustrate this and that, or first, in the lecture, furthermore, as the passage mentions, so you can introduce more ideas. Okay. Depending on your pace, the way you speak is how much information you can include in your speaking. Okay, if you're a lower speaker, then try that your examples are short, very concise, like very directly. If you speak very fast, then you can explain more and more. You can give more examples or focus on the example more for giving more information. Okay, that's depending on your pace. Okay, so if you speak fast, you should have more notes in order to not uh, finish talking at 40 seconds and you last the last 20 seconds. You can use all the time. And when you are reading, some people tend to copy the information like is in the reading. You can do it, but try to use synonyms because in the raters, they prefer seeing some synonyms than repeating the words that they have. Okay, so if you use synonyms or you paraphrase the sentences, it could be better for you because you can get a higher score and not repeating the same words. Okay, so for example, if in the first part you start mentioning this thing like according to the reading passage, and then according to the professor, then so you are repeating according to and according to it, for example. So you can give different. You could give different ideas or give different synonyms, paraphrasing things. And other thing, if you are, I won't say slower. If you cannot copy or you cannot take notes very fast, try to pay attention and try to look for the examples. So at the time that you were speaking, you can say what you remember. Okay, if you don't have any note, like you didn't have enough time to take notes, or your notes are not complete, or you think that your notes are not good enough, so try to tell what you remember. Okay, but that is something that if you don't have, if you cannot plan or you cannot organize your ideas according to the structure, so you can speak telling what you remember only. Okay, that's the contingency plan. Like it's not like it's the last plan you could have. Okay. 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 Let's do this. Here. Now, these are lectures. No, these are articles, the first part. And we are going to first introduce it. Now, let's identify the keywords, identify the main topic. Okay. So please, who hasn't told? Valeria Celada, can you read this?
Cognitive dissonance. Individuals sometimes experience a contradiction between their actions and their beliefs, between what they are doing and what they believe they should be doing. These contradictions can cause a kind of mental discomfort known as cognitive dissonance. People who experience cognitive dissonance often do not want to change the way they are acting, so they resolve the contradictory situation in another way. They change their interpretation of the situation in a way that minimizes the contradiction between what they are doing and what they believe should be doing.
Correct, thank you. Now, Take notes. Let's do just the first part. Here, we're going to start doing this. According to the reading passage, given the topic, is described as, and you give a definition. Okay, so you need to identify from here what is the main topic and how to then define that topic. Okay, so I will give you what, 20 seconds or more? No, I think it's easier. So tell me, who has the main idea? How can you explain? Remember, this takes 10, 15 seconds to explain. So you don't have to repeat all completely. Just the main topic and explain it well. Yeah. Okay. Someone has the main idea? Who has the main idea? I will say, Andrea, do you have it?
No, exactly, teacher.
Nope. Guillermo?
I said my answer or only the general idea?
Your answer.
My answer? Okay. According to the reading passage, individuals sometimes have contradictions between their actions and their beliefs. That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, it is okay. So we hear the main topic. Again, we can identify on the title. Sorry, Guillermo, will you say something?
No, yes, the title. I was reading the title.
Correct. So the main topic is related to it's here. Cognitive dissonance. So we can start giving our idea saying, according to the reading passage, cognitive dissonance is described as, and then you say something here. Like Guillermo said, normally you can find it here in the first part. Like, individuals sometimes experience a contradiction between their actions and their beliefs. Okay, and that's it. That's between what they are doing and what they believe they should be doing. So you can use this, or maybe this. This is another example. No? We can say, according to the reading passage, cognitive dissonance is described as what they are doing and what they believe they should be doing. And it's a little simple. Okay. So in this little part, and as you can see, it takes 10 seconds, 15 seconds. So you have this. Okay. Now let's do another example. Here, Mr. Andres Garcia, can you read it? Andres Garcia, are you there? No, I think he's not here. So please, Ms. Terrazas.
Okay. Target marketing. Advertisers in the past have used radio and television in an attempt to provide information about their products to large, general audiences. It was once thought that the best way to sell a product was to advertise it to as many people as possible. However, more recent trends in advertising have turned toward target marketing. Target marketing is the strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences that have been determined to have the greatest need or desire for the product being marketed. Target marketing has proved to be very effective in reaching potential customers.
Customers. Okay, so here, how can you introduce? This, according to the reading passage, is described as in the lecture. The professor here is when you give it more. Okay. So what is the introduction here? Can you tell me? Again, it's the same. According to the reading passage, target marketing is described as, you can say something. What can you say, Pablo?
I could say that the target marketing is the greatest desired is the greatest desire for companies to get in a specific market instead of a very large audience that they have to do. Yes.
Okay. Okay, but you take that from here?
Yes.
Not exactly, no? It's the idea. You have the idea, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in that case, it is really cool that you have the knowledge about that. Okay, so you don't repeat exactly what is from here. But remember, you need to be focusing on this. Yeah, you had the idea. It's correct. It's perfect. It's good. Now, for the ones that we don't know what is the marketing about, so we could say we can introduce here the idea. But I think for some people, it is very common to know because it's a kind of general knowledge what the marketing is. So maybe. So here it says, oh, so advertisers in the past have used radio and television in an attempt to provide information about the products to large general audiences. It was one thought that the best way to sell a product was to advertise it to as many people as possible. However, more recent trends in advertising have turned toward target marketing. Target marketing is a strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences. Right. To have the greater need of desired product being market. Target marketing has proved to be very effective in reaching potential customers. So here you can see very in a few words, it's a target marketing is the strategy of advertising to smaller specific audiences. And that's how do you could explain how can you describe that topic, no? So according to the reading passage, the target marketing is described as the strategy, very important to mention, the strategy of advertising to smaller, very specific audiences. And that's it. Because you're focused not in the general idea of marketing, like all what marketing is, but here is only what the target marketing is. Okay, so you have that. And as you can see, the first part is very easy. Again, this is a template that you can follow. They're using on this. No, it's easy to remember. According to the reading passage, this and that is described as, but it's not mandatory that you have to use it. No, you can use your own way of speaking. The thing is that here you have an idea how to say it. Okay. Let's do. Okay, let's do an example. Let me go here. Let's check an example. We don't have enough time to do it. Wait. Oh. Sorry, my internet is slow. So here we go. Okay. Now, we have to read, and you need to identify the main topic here, okay? We are only check, okay? That's not necessary to you to take notes, okay? Remember that tomorrow you will have practice, and maybe you can practice this, the same of this. But right now we're going to check the structure of that. It says, now read a passage from a history textbook. You will have 45 seconds to read a passage. Here, as a practice, we don't have time. Like, it's not necessary to have the time. But in the TOEFL test day, you will have a countdown clock here, counting from 45 to 0. And when they finish, when it reach to 0, it changes. Okay, it moves on. It changes for the lecture. Okay, so here I will read it. It says cultural impacts of climate change. Climate change is not a modern phenomenon. In fact, new evidence shows that throughout history, variations in weather patterns and long-term transformations of the environment were responsible for some of the greatest revolutions in world culture. Because climate is so closely tied to productivity and the fertility of the land, even subtle variation in long-term weather patterns could have profound effects on fragile societies. Today, archaeologists, geologists, historians, and meteorologists are working in close cooperation to investigate the repercussions of climate change since the dawn of human civilization. Okay, so here you can identify, look at the title. This is what you're going to explain, future impacts of climate change. Okay, so when you read and it moves on, you won't see the reading again. Okay, you only see the reading once. Okay, so that's why you need to take notes of that. Then you will listen to the lecture. Okay.
Now listen to part of a lecture from a class on ancient history.
Climate change hasn't always been seen as such a major factor on how we've progressed, how culture has developed, but more and more we're finding that it does play a major role. Let's take the example of Egypt. The country today is harshly divided between the Sahara Desert, where basically nothing grows, and the area around the Nile River Valley, which is still one of the most fertile places on the whole planet. But the thing is, we're now discovering that the landscape of Egypt was not always divided in that way. Instead, until the 4th millennium BCE, the desert of Egypt was actually a rich, prosperous area of fields and farmable meadows. There were societies living away from the Nile, successfully farming or getting by in a place that would later be completely uninhabitable. But then, of course, the climate changed and the Sahara Desert formed. That meant people were forced to move to the Nile Valley to survive because there were no more fields to cultivate or animals to hunt. So right, you can imagine their culture had to adapt as they moved to a new area, a new climate. But it doesn't stop there. The Nile Valley was already settled. So these newcomers fleeing the desert, they evidently fought the people already living in the valley. And we see that from the construction of these giant defensive walls for the first time in history. So, right, people joined together behind these walls and formed cities to protect themselves. This was a large interaction between communities, deeply affecting the local culture. The changing landscape was at the heart of that change.
Explain how the lecturer's claims give a concrete example of climate change's effect on culture.
Okay, then when you listen the prompt, they ask you exactly what you need to say. So that's why, in this case, explain how the lecturer's claims give a concrete example of climate change's effect on culture. So here you need to focus on the lecture, right? So that's why when you are giving your speech, the first part you need to do is to introduce the general context, explaining the title, and then a little explanation of that, and then you focus on the lecture. Okay, so given the examples they mentioned about Sahara and things like that, so you have 30 seconds to prepare your answer, and then you have 60 seconds to speak. Okay. So, and remember, you tomorrow, you will practice this this question, the question number 3. Okay. So right now, please answer this little survey that appears on your screen for the class of today. Okay, and remember, if you have any question, you can ask, and remember to do the first simulation. You have time under the simulation, so you can do it. Okay, and I don't know, right now, do you have any question?
No, it's clear for me.
I have a question.
Tell me, Valeria.
Do we have some platform to practice all these lectures?
Sorry, what?
We have a platform to practice?
You
Or
have
how we can practice?
you have a simulation. Remember that in the web page, you know, the executiveenglish.com, you have a simulation area. You need to go there and look for the first simulation. It says volume 1. Download it. It's an application or something like that, and you can do the first simulation. Is similar to do the TOEFL test. It takes 3 hours and a half, something like that, and you can see right now how are your skills with the TOEFL. Then when we finish the course, the last day of the course, you have to take the second simulation, and then you can compare what can you improve, what did you improve during this course. Okay. Platform, you only have this the YouTube videos, all right, in the channel. It's in the description on the WhatsApp, the YouTube channel, so you can revise again these videos so you can practice. Yep. But yeah, you had to do the simulation. Okay, that's important for you to do it. And
Okay.
also you have the calls. I don't know if you already scheduled your calls.
Not yet.
No, but do you know who's the teacher that give you the calls?
No.
No.
Let me. Maybe you're not assigned yet. Paola Molina, no. Let me see. Nicole, Aide. No, no. Natalia Rivas. Carlos Torres. No, you're not assigned it yet. I'm gonna ask to the coordinator because you have the opportunity to have personal sessions, 20 minutes of session. You can ask directly to the teacher. Okay. So when they assign you, they have this. You have 6 calls of 20 minutes each. So you can practice with teacher or you can ask questions about the topic, whatever you want to do. Okay. But I'm gonna tell to the coordinator so you can be assigned to the teacher. Okay, and the teacher contacts you. Maybe it's me or teacher George. Could be possible.